one of the things that's certainly occupied my mind recently is how you try to get people more engaged in supporting and working with MPs once they are actually elected. And as you may know, the parties tend, because of the fact that they have a central platform and policies which the MPs must essentially go along with, it's occurred to me that an independent is in the position to try to draw together a different group of voices. So one idea that I've had is that were I elected, I would want to get together working groups, non-partisan working groups on the major issues like health and environment and so forth. Now, let me put it to you just hypothetically. If you were in a constituency with an independent MP who asked for membership on a working group on an issue such as health or environment or energy or some other issue, would that be of interest to you as young people?
It would be, I think.
And I think one of the benefits of doing that as well then is that they can convey, like word of mouth with young people is really powerful, I think, and so they can convey things back to all of their friends, and then it's going to spread, and then you can get more people involved, and it's going to feel like people then have a voice, because I know as a young person it really feels like even if you had an issue that there's not really anything that you can do about it, and so I think something like that would be quite effective.
And I think too it would be nice to have local representation, because we see federal parliament as something that happens down in Canberra and is so disconnected to the choices that we can make or the impact that we can have, that by showing that you're involving people in the local community, it would make us feel a lot more connected and a lot more interested. I think also the idea of like working groups that don't necessarily have a particular party's values as their basis is very enticing to me, because I'm a person who likes to just come up with the best solution to a problem, and I think what annoys me the most about politics is often the best solution isn't found because two parties are fighting each other for different ideas, and I'd much rather the best solution come up as a result of having like experts or a range of people involved in the process that aren't biased towards one side or another. I think that would be great.
Now, one of the things that I find frustrating about the parties, and I don't want to give the impression I'm not in favour of political parties, we really need them for political stability. I think if you don't have good, strong parties, then the system is really in trouble. But what I do find frustrating is that the parties increasingly have hollowed out in terms of membership. So that, for example, nationally, the Liberal Party and the ALP have memberships that are really quite small, surprisingly small, about 40,000 to 50,000 each. You could pack them all into Suncorp Stadium easily for the whole country. The Banana Coast Credit Union has more members than the Liberal Party nationally. Have you ever thought about joining a party? What do you think about the parties? What would you like to do to strengthen what the parties do?
I think young people don't know what would happen if what do you gain by joining a party, and therefore why would you bother spending that time that you're saving up to do what you want to do on something that may not have an effect.
For myself, I haven't found a party that really fits to what I believe in, so I like that, this election I might choose to vote for a certain political party, and the next election I can change my mind and vote completely the other way, so that, rather
keep them on their toes.
Yeah, essentially.
That's good.
And I think like Sandy said before, I personally don't want to sign myself up to a set of views that covers such a broad range of topics. Like, I have different opinions on different things, and I agree with different people concerning different issues.
Yeah.
And so when you, if you sign yourself up to a party, then you sort of are agreeing to a whole set of values, and I might not necessarily agree with all of them. I just want to pick and choose.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I know that the two folks on my right here have travelled fairly extensively in the last year or so. Nick, I don't know whether you've been overseas much, have you?
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of travelling overseas throughout my life. So.
Okay. And Cassie as well?
Not so much.
Yeah.
A little bit, but yeah.
Well, I guess one thing I would like to know is that when you think about how others see us, how others look at Australia, what are the things that you think, well, you can be proud of, that you can say, boy, Australia really does a good job in that area? Or what are the areas where you are less proud, where you wish Australia had a different record than it does? Are there any issues that sort of hit you that way, either way?
I've been to Japan, and one of the really amazing things about Japan is they have this great culture of honesty and hardworkingness, and they have these really good ethics, and everybody over there is employed. You'll walk down the street and there'll be a guy like trimming trees that are on the side of the road and stuff like that. Everybody has a job, and it doesn't matter how menial it is, but they're proud to do their job, and everybody works really hard, and they just have this really good ethics system. And I think that's somewhere where Australia falls down, because we have this sort of culture where it's awesome if you can, you know, live off workers' compo for a couple months and, you know, have a free ride, and it's sort of, we just don't have the same attitude towards that kind of thing. And I know in Japan as well, if you lose your wallet or something, if there is contact details in there, it will be returned to you with all of the money in it, because it is just so wrong for them to consider taking something from somebody else, and they just have this huge amount of respect, and I think that's something that Australia really lacks.
I think one of the things that I was in Thailand probably 6 months after the tsunami went through, and the thing that impressed me there was how thankful everyone was about Australia's aid involvement, and so I think that's something that we can be very proud of. You know, people speak a lot about our military involvement, but our military also does an outstanding job with aid, and so I think that the recognition that we get from that is appreciated.
Sure. Yeah. Sandy, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got things from both sides, I suppose. When I was overseas, I found a huge amount of just love for Australia. Most people from any country that I visited absolutely just love Australia if they'd been there, or people from Australia, because they love our attitude and they love our country, which makes me really appreciate our environment and the need for us to look after it. One thing that really bothered me is that, and Mandy and I noticed this when we were travelling, if you didn't introduce yourself as Australian and people thought you were American, they would be extremely rude to you, extremely rude. And then if you said, "Oh, I'm from Australia," "Oh, you're from Australia," "Oh, you know," and their tone would change completely. I never want to be, for our country to be like that. I never want to have the rest of the world frown upon us because of our leaders and the views of our leaders. And even now I feel a little bit of hostility creeping in towards Australia just because of our involvement with America. And, you know, regardless of the wonderful things that we do to support America and all other countries as well that we give with our aid, I just think that we need to be careful with how we are perceived and what we are perceived to be supporting, because it really would bother me if we ended up like that, if we ended up that everyone hated Australia.
So would it be fair to say that you'd like to see Australia really follow its own independent line
Yes.
for foreign policy?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a little bit, it's sort of disappointing the way that Australia is perceived at the moment. And I think some of that is based on a fair call, but I think also some of it, people tend to jump to conclusions because we support things from other countries, but yeah.
And Nick, any thoughts there?
Well, just on that last bit, I think Australia, at least until very recently, used to be known for very much minding its own business. It'd kind of just step back and it'd let things happen. Something happened, they'd go in and help, but there was no, you know, people were never worried about them trying to expand or trying to do anything, because it was just, they're happy where they are. So I think that was a big thing, that we were kind of seen as that friendly nation that would just is happy to go anywhere or do anything or talk to anyone. Something else is, I think Australia has a lot of engineering and design talent that isn't quite seen. There's a lot of things that we do or design that doesn't work out quite well, either because we don't have enough infrastructure or stuff like that for it. I think one example is, I think they might have been buying F-111s in from the US, and we were modifying them, and in the end the US found out, modified them there, and then sold them to us at more than we were paying to modify them. So it's those kind of things that I think we're quite good at, in ingenuity and working stuff out to get a better product, but it's not something that we're really putting forwards enough.
I think going on from what Nick was saying, even more globally speaking, whether it's health or education, people from overseas probably don't recognise that we're at the forefront of a lot of research that's being done across the board. So I don't really see us as, I guess, the smart state